Okay, so we are going to talk about a very famous, popular novel in Japan called Kokoro. I believe. Well,
Hmm.
I read anyway that they teach it even to middle schoolers, which I found a bit odd. But I guess middle schoolers are old enough, even if
To understand, yeah, the
yeah,
concept.
even if they're suicide and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, so this was published in 1914, but to be honest, I kind of feel like it could have been published um, a- around 1945 or
Yeah,
maybe,
exactly.
yeah,
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 has the same feeling. Again, could be that the translation renders the Japanese a bit more modern, but all the topics and the way the characters interact, yeah, gives you a feeling that could be both 1914 and could be the 1940s as well.
yeah. So obviously the novel is set in Japan. So it's mostly it's set in Tokyo and somewhere close by in the countryside. And I believe some of the characters go on some trips to the coast or whatever a little bit as
Yes,
well.
yes. The story starts with a small introduction of how I found it interesting that it, the character notes a lot of small details. That's what makes it feel so real. Even small details that may be seen as irrelevant to the larger plot, and instead they are noted, and they are even like some of the memorable parts are these small, almost uh, inconsequential snippets of the larger plot that do not matter in the long run.
Yeah. So I guess we could explain what Kokoro means, and
Hmm.
so the introduction to the book um explains it as it literally just means heart, but it can mean
Yeah,
yeah, it
it
can
can mean also the matter of things, like the core issue, the core of all things
yeah. So it's
to a degree.
yeah, and I watched a video by some kendo guy or whatever trying to explain to
Interesting. In Italian, the title is not just simple heart, it's the heart of things or heart and mind. Those are the two common titles by which it's translated in Italian.
I see. That makes sense. That's basically what it means. Yeah. The translator just calls it the heart of things, but I think it's good that they just left it untranslated uh,
Yes.
because it can also mean like the literal heart as well.
Hmm.
So anyhow, so the original title was Kokoro Sensei's Testament. That was
Hmm.
how as you probably already know by having having looked at the Wikipedia as I have. Um, it, so it was published as a serial um, and as Kokoro's Sensei's Testament, and so the last part of the novel is still called Sensei's Testament.
Hmm.
Anyway, this was published as a serial. Did you feel like this was a serial?
Um, no, not really. But to be honest, there are many books who were published as serial, but don't feel at all that way.
Hmm. That is true. That is true. Like I guess like some of Charles Dickens' novels. Yeah.
Yes, many Russian novels, many American novels, many Italian novels too were printed that way, so it's not too surprising.
So when we talked about No Longer Human, we called it an I novel. I don't think that this one falls into that category because I don't. This is not obviously this is not autobiographical in any way, but it's still in first person, and I
Mhm.
guess the part where uh, it might be related to the author's life a bit might be the fact that a lot of the characters are university students, and
Mhm.
well, Natsume Soseki himself, obviously he was a university student, and he went to the UK as a university student, and then he came back when he came back to Japan. I believe he started teaching Japanese either at Tokyo University or Waseda. I can't remember, one of the big ones.
Mhm.
And at that time he also started and he had a very good position as a professor, but he started writing serials for newspapers, and basically decided to give up um, his position as a university professor to write
Yeah,
serials.
which makes sense.
Apparently he didn't like it. uh, which yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's reflected in some way, because like some of the characters act like universities useless or something.
Yeah, it was interesting to see, or that at least a lot of people give it an intrinsic value that many of the characters cannot find,
Um,
or or even worse, like in the case of the spoiler for the story ahead, the father of the main character, in a sense, wants to see his son graduating mostly as a form of of self gratifying last wish rather than because is sort of proud of himself through his son. I don't
yeah,
know.
I mean yeah, it's very common, and I wouldn't be surprised if
No,
yeah.
exactly. It's something that probably has existed since the beginning of time. That when there are a lot of, not all, but quite a few parents who see in their children's achievements, they see their own achievement, and so to a degree it's understandable to, like, I brought up this person and this person was able to achieve, therefore it's also something I'm proud of. The problem is, like in this case, it's like something that takes pretty much so much weight in his life that he doesn't want to die until he sees that his son reach that goal, and thus he can be proud when he talks with other people around him.
Yeah, which obviously, yeah, let's just put it this way: the son does not have a very high opinion of the people around his father, and basically in the countryside, essentially.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, you do see a bunch of characters, K, Sensei, the protagonist, who are, well, not so much Sensei, but mostly K and the protagonist, I guess, who want to like find their own way or something to
Mm,
live. And how like in a way, like the countryside people are more seem to be like more down to earth, not intellectual, not interested in this high concepts or whatever, like wisdom or whatever these
yeah.
characters claim to be going after. And yeah, and then their sense. So the first time that I read this novel, I think probably because of the very very awful anime adaptation. Yeah, don't watch it.
Let's get this out of
Yeah,
out of the way. Don't watch the anime version.
yeah. It's a two episodes out of the Aoi Bungaku series. The Aoi Bungaku series, most of the stories are okay, I thought. So like they will spend like I think it's around 13 episodes or something, and they will spend around 2 episodes on some classic Japanese literature like No Longer Human and Kokoro.
Mhm. I just feel that something like No Longer Human, which is a bit more compact, of a story would make sense to be adapted in 2 episodes.
Yeah, it worked a lot
Kokoro,
better. Yeah.
yeah, feels a bit heavier. It's something that you need to let sink in a little bit. You cannot rush through it.
Yes,
A
yes.
lot of it, a lot of it you feel the time. You feel how there are time lapses and how the characters take their time to describe the current situation and the feelings and the atmosphere. Not only not only the characters, but the places, and that's not something you can rush.
Yeah.
You can rush with just 2 episodes.
What they tried to do in the anime adaptation, because obviously there's not enough time, is that so one thing which they did, which made sense, is that they cut out I guess the first two parts of the novel, which were Sensei and I, and
And my parents
Parents
and
and
I.
I,
Mhm.
and just focused on Sensei and his testament or whatever. So,
Yeah, but
yeah,
don't know because you lose a lot of the context without those two introductory characters chapters, despite being way shorter than the last one, develop the relationships and between the two main characters, the narrator and Sensei, and between the narrator and why Sensei told him so many things, and then later on one understands,
yeah,
and especially the letters, the two letters that the main character sends to Sensei later on makes sense why Sensei wants to open himself so much.
yes, because basically what happened is that it just turned the anime just turned into just a story about a love triangle or whatever. I mean,
Which is a bit reductive, I do believe.
yes. They did try some. So basically, the first episode, basically, in just 20 minutes, 20 minutes or so, they covered the whole of the last part, and then in the next episode, they tried to retell um, the last part from K's perspective, um,
Hmm.
which
Interesting. I'm not gonna say that's not interesting, but
the problem was that I didn't buy their representation of K.
yeah,
Um,
that's just something I was fearing would happen
yeah,
because as a character, um, one of the interesting part about him is how enigmatic and difficult to read he is.
yeah, yeah. So I guess let's go back to the start.
Hmm.
So it starts off with the protagonist, who I believe is not yet a university student. He's quote unquote a
Um,
college.
yeah, I think it throughout the story it starts university and by the end of of the first chapter, pretty much he has graduated. But at the beginning, no, he's just a student, college student going to
Yeah,
um, this like beach resort location with a friend.
yeah. Some of the Americans might not get because probably if anyone is going to watch this, it's probably going to be an American. But by college, they don't mean university here,
Yeah.
and it's a bit confusing also because although he's in college, so before university, um, which I guess would be the equivalent of high school in America or whatever.
Hmm.
He's like living in a dormitory, and I think most other students as well. And he's living away from his parents as well in Tokyo.
Yes.
And for the holidays, he has gone to a resort
Hmm.
with a friend, but the friend has to go back because one of um, uh, their parents is not well, or might be pretending not to be
Yeah.
well.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So it's called back home.
yeah, foreshadowing, or maybe
Yeah.
that author didn't have any other ideas. Um, And
He's ordered back home pretty much.
yeah.
Is a request. Is a command masked as a request.
So yeah. Anyway, the protagonist also tells his friend, who never shows up again, as well, to just go. Because
Hmm.
what if the parents? So the reason why the friend was reluctant to go, if I remember correctly, is that his parents wanted the friend's parents wanted to marry off the friend to
Yes,
someone. Yeah.
yes. One of the reasons he knows that it could all be just a ploy to the relatives being like, he's sick, your father is sick, you need to get married
Yeah,
for
I
sake
mean,
of the family.
again, it's kind of similar to what happens to Sensei.
No, exactly. There are a lot of the interesting part is this that a lot of the things that there are echoes of things that happen to many of the characters, and that's why Sensei is the way he is and why he does what he does.
Yeah. So when at the beach, he notices the protagonist notices a foreigner, and the reason why,
Hmm.
by the way, the reason why we calling the protagonist is that like maybe they mention his name once, but neither of us can remember.
Mm,
Yeah. So
I looked now at some sources. Doesn't seem like he has a name.
so
Even on the Japanese page of the book, it just say that they call him I.
I see.
Like
Yeah, like we
Watashi, they say that
yeah.
the name is.
I don't, yeah, I don't know. Um, so anyhow, the protagonist is at the beach, and he sees, and it's full of Japanese people, but he
Mhm.
sees a foreigner. By a
With a
foreigner,
hat. I think
yeah,
I think it's also a hat that attracts his attention to
yeah.
the two persons, the foreigner and the Japanese person next to him wearing a hat.
So obviously, by a foreigner, usually, they mean a European. So yeah,
Yeah, a Westerner at least, someone with European blood.
yeah, and so like earlier you mentioned like some of the small details which just end up being memorable for no particular reason. Like for example, I remember that the reason why he caught his attention was not just because it was a foreigner, but also because um, he was I guess wearing just his shorts, whereas the protagonist had earlier seen foreigners who were I guess more covered up when going
Yeah,
bathing. Yeah. And anyway, the foreigner is talking to a Japanese man. I can't I, I can't remember if there was any description of the Japanese man, but anyway, the Japanese man
no,
is Sensei.
it's a very vague description. It doesn't tell you much about his outward aspects. It talks more about the character,
Yeah,
the person, uh, the Kokoro in a sense.
yeah. I mean, I think I think from the start, one thing that I guess one question which came to mind is like what exactly is the protagonist finding so interesting about Sensei, and because Sensei most of the time doesn't look like he gives a shit or thinks that
I do believe it's because the fact that was he was close to a foreigner made him interested in that sense. In a time where Japan just started to sort of open up more to the Western ideas. At the beginning, it was a forceful opening, but then during the Meiji era, was more of a let's try to embrace what's best
yeah,
of this
yeah, yeah.
world.
Yeah, I think that that's a good excuse for them to meet. As any. No, 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 not really. But I mean, later on as well. Because Sensei is also a very let's say a self-effacing, but it's not like in sort of a humble way. Like he's honest about that.
Yeah,
that he's not this wise man that you think I am, and yeah,
That's why he keeps questioning the young protagonist.
yeah, and like at one point he says, which was very memorable, that like your present attitude towards me is bad enough. I dislike it enough, but when I think about how you will start to dislike me afterwards, like I guess when you
Mm,
grow up or whatever. But even though Sensei says this, so spoilers, I guess. The whole novel is written. So when the narrator, like from the first part of the novel, it is clear that Sensei is dead, and the protagonist is writing about Sensei after his death.
mhm.
But he still likes Sensei.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he
Um,
hasn't changed his opinion as Sensei was hoping, in a sense.
so yeah, so they meet up, and I don't think we need to go into the details about
No, it's
yeah.
yeah. The meetup is kind of interesting, like how they it begins with Sensei losing his glasses, and the main narrator seeing them falling, and thus he's able to return them to him.
Yeah.
And then they slowly start to talk, and then the vacations are over. Everyone goes back to their place, and at the same time, they keep in touch, even if Sensei is a bit reluctant at the beginning.
Mm. So anyway, the protagonist is yeah, they start meeting each other up. Well, it's mostly the protagonist barging into Sensei's
Yeah.
place. And I was kind of I guess the first time I read this, I kind of got the wrong impression that Sensei was to the protagonist what K was to Sensei, but it's not like that, because even though Sensei says that, like, he respects K's way or whatever, it's a different thing, because for one, K and Sensei were the same age, um,
Hmm.
whereas here it's an older man.
Plus, Sensei is the one who brought Kei into his life in a sense, while
Yeah,
this is the someone, like you said, barging into his life.
and but basically, Sensei, K is a friend. Sensei treated K more like a friend than a teacher. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I think we have to explain what Sensei means. So Sensei just means teacher, but
Teacher, master is a honorific for someone who usually has a teaching or instructing position. Can be someone who teaches you at school, can be someone who teaches you how to fence, can be someone that teaches you how to craft.
yes.
It's the figure of someone who has more experience in something than you, in a sense.
By the way, did
Yeah, respect.
yeah, did Sensei's wife also call him Sensei, or was it just? I think it was just a
Um,
protagonist.
yeah, the wife never. I don't think. No, never says his name though. She talks about him saying, I think most of the time, my husband.
I
A
see.
few times that she never, no one uses his name.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Again, my memory is getting muddled up, probably because of the anime. Because in the anime, the wife calls him. Yeah, it's stupid. Anyhow, yeah. There's a lot
A
of
bit weird, more than stupid. It's kind of weird that it would be like, can you imagine? You are married. someone is married to you and calls
No,
you
no.
by your
I
dad's
think
wife.
yeah. I think
Are you
it's
doing doctor? Like
yeah.
that would be
Yeah, I think it's before they're married as well, because the anime only covers the part with K. Uh,
even sillier
yeah, it was so awkward. Yeah, um, yeah. Anyhow, so they start meeting up, and I guess uh,
the,
the
the main character starts to recognize some patterns in Sensei's life, like that it doesn't work, and that on certain days he never find. He comes a few weeks and can never find him, and then Sensei's wife explains a few things about Sensei's routines, and then from there we slowly start to see the real, let's say, teacher and students relationship starting to come into shape between the two characters.
yeah, and I think um, it's in these first two parts of the novel, which I think cover almost half of it, which basically builds up for us to actually be interested about
Hmm.
Sensei's backstory.
In his past, yeah, there are a lot of uh, small questions that start to creep in, and you want to know the answer, and then you discover the answer, and you almost regret, in a sense, knowing that that's why, and this is the reason why these characters are in these positions, and why Sensei has certain routines, which I found quite nice, quite interesting. It was a mystery. It was a set of mysteries that was answered in a smart and very human way.
Yeah, it felt pretty natural.
Hmm.
So, so um, as they meet up, they have these, I guess, semi-philosophical talks or whatever.
Yeah, they discuss various high concept ideas and various subjects like the meaning of certain things. It was cool. Many, but many of them felt organic, like not forced. They came up like talking points that a university student and someone who has been a university student and now technically could hold a position as a teacher would discuss. For example, I used to visit an old professor of mine, and sometimes we will lose ourselves in similar talks, like maybe not at that depth. After all, this is a novel, so certain things need to be emphasized in a different way than if it were real life. But I felt it was relatable, like it was natural, and they were interesting talks about life, time, money, family, humanity.
Yeah, I mean, for
Mm.
example, a very natural example which comes to mind is that when they are in a park or something, they see a couple, a young couple, and
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
everybody's looking at them, and the protagonist is sort of like snickering at them, look at them, and Sensei asks, like, basically points out that the reason why you were like sort of laughing at them is because you are restless and you're looking for someone to be
Mm-hmm.
to
To
be in.
point and laugh at pretty.
And but then he says something strange as well, that that like the reason why the protagonists are coming to meet to Sensei is that the protagonist um, is that he is looking that basically his friendship or whatever is like a like a trial or a training period for love with a woman, almost.
Yeah, it's interesting how you describe it that way, and I think there is some truth. Like
Um,
sometimes you want to talk with someone who's older than you, and in a sense try to test the waters, talking with them before, and see, because usually someone who's older than you already went through the same feelings, the same experiences. Therefore, you try to see what effects love, in this sense, romantic love, may have had on him or her. I think that's what I got out of this talk.
Yeah, given
What
that
do you
you,
agree?
yeah, exactly. Like, given that you talked about experiences, I kind of feel like several of the characters, for example, the wife, Sensei's wife, and Sensei himself, like kind of imply that academic knowledge and wisdom is useless. Like, for example, um, because the protagonist kind of expects, or at least that's what Sensei says, um, that Sensei has some deep philosophical reason for his beliefs, but then
Hmm.
so he's very disappointed when, like, Sensei starts talking about money, about
Yeah.
how money, he says something like, there's no stereotypically bad person,
Hmm.
but
But
anyone,
what money is involved,
yeah,
yeah, anyone can become a rogue.
um, a-
And the protagonist is like, that's it? That's your grand? And it's like, what were you expecting after all? And then you understand later on why he
yeah.
thinks in such pragmatical terms.
Yes, and like, Sensei explains that, tries to explain to the protagonist that he has only got a very few ideas. Like, he's not this guy with a lot of ideas, that he thinks the protagonist thinks that he is, but that those
Reminds me,
few ideas are based on his own experiences.
yeah, it reminds me a little bit like when you think of someone like Saint Thomas Aquinas, you think like, oh, such wisdom, such depth, but his primer one of his most important lessons to all his students was, there is nothing that a good meal, a good bath, and a good sleep can solve. Like, that's very grounded, that's very down to earth, and that was one of the things that he wanted to teach. One of the things believe was the most important and most valuable thing he could teach to his own students. So I find it kind of similar. This kind of, you think I got such interesting ideas, so many things to say, but this is for me. This is the most important. It's one of the most basic ones.
And I guess, and then Sensei reveals that the reason why he doesn't want to explain how he came to these ideas is because basically he didn't, to explain that, he would have to, when the protagonist expresses his
Yes.
earnestness to
Yes.
learn about life,
Mhm.
Sensei explains that in order to explain that, he would have to basically tell him about his past
Yes, and if
experiences.
he's reluctant at the time, it's
But
like you're
yeah,
ready.
yeah, I think, but the protagonist gets, basically, Sensei likes the protagonist enough, that he basically promises the
Mhm.
protagonist to tell him at the right time.
He's
uh,
saying pretty much, for the moment, I need to shield you about that part of who I am and who I was and how I became who I am. But when you'll be ready, I'll make sure to tell you.
yeah, and
It's a promise.
yeah, there's also a very funny scene, like, when the protagonist gets, I call him the protagonist, but I'm not sure. Sensei is kind of the protagonist as well.
Yeah, it's funny because it's something in between. It's something a little bit reminds me of how um, Sherlock Holmes. Most the stories are pretty much narrated from Watson's point of view, and in a sense, this is a mystery too. The mystery we need to solve in this case is Sensei. And the last chapter is a very long reveal of this mystery.
So yeah, the funny scene is when, so basically, the protagonist gets angry, and he thinks that, oh, like at that moment I hated Sensei. He says,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh,
It's like
and then
it's kind of relatable when you feel when you are like young and there is someone who doesn't comply to some of your requests in that moment. You feel a surge of pure.
yeah, I mean, like this guy is not taking me seriously. He's just laughing at me.
Exactly.
Um,
Hmm.
and
It's belittling me.
yeah, and he tries to get back get back at Sensei by telling him, oh, like you were very excited, weren't you? Like when you were talking about it.
Yeah.
Like you basically you lost your cool,
Hmm.
and then I think he walks fast or something, and
Yeah.
Sensei just stops and and takes a leak
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And that,
on the
that
side of the road.
confuses the protagonist even more.
But then unexpectedly Sensei does come back to that, and explains that yes, of course
Yeah.
I would be excited about that, because yeah, I was basically my family fortune was stolen from me.
Hmm.
Um, so
The interesting part is, yeah, Sensei. Uh, what he doesn't say during the first two parts, the first part, let's say, especially, everything is later revealed, and you understand the reluctance and why he did what he did.
yeah,
Again, the characters are really well built in that regard.
so they also introduce another. So the protagonist or narrator or whatever, he is Watson. Also meets. It comes to think of it, yeah, they do have sort of a Sherlock Holmes and Doctor Watson, and
Yeah,
yeah,
a
and I mean
little bit.
a little bit, and of course Holmes, of course, didn't like people either.
Hmm.
Um,
And
anyhow,
both of them keep stuff hidden from their from their companions, so to say, to reveal it when it's the most dramatic moments in
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
stories.
to be honest, a lot when it comes to Sherlock Holmes, like some of the times it doesn't even make sense why he would hide it, other than to show
I
off.
think
I don't know.
it's the same in most mystery novels, honestly. At one point, you want to scream in your face, and why didn't you tell it, you freak?
Yeah, he just feels like he wants to show off to Watson, and anyway,
Yeah, a little bit.
um,
Sometimes makes sense, other times, yeah, you feel like you didn't say just because you want to have the big reveal, don't you?
so anyway, the protagonist is introduced to another character as well, which is
Mm-hmm.
Sensei's wife, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing which you are told about Sensei's wife is that she's beautiful. Um, I'm not exactly sure how old Sensei and
I do believe it shows that it's in like it's late 40s, I think, something like that.
yeah, yeah, they do say that they tried to have
Mm,
children but they couldn't.
yeah, they don't exactly say how old he is.
Yeah, 30s or 40s, I expect, but no, not older than
Yeah,
that.
no, 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 not much
Older
older.
than
Yes.
um. So I get so the protagonist is very interested about the relationship that they have, and like he imagines in his own mind that like it must have been this great romance or something.
Yes,
Uh,
like all young people, they picture something out of a book.
yeah.
The fire of passion, swiping them up, and
Um,
maybe even a love just to fulfill their desire to be together.
and
Something like.
so at first to the protagonist it seems like she's just playing the part of the the hostess, polite
Hmm.
hostess, so he can't get through to her. But at some point, so basically, Sensei has to go to meet one of his acquaintances to a dinner or something, and which he seems he really um, goes to, still seems to go to, and Sensei asks. the protagonist to stay with his wife because there's a burglar going
Yeah,
around.
that was a interesting, quite funny scene in a sense,
Yeah,
because it's at one point it tries to be like almost the brooding type, shutting himself in a corner, not saying anything, but doesn't work.
yeah. I mean, yeah. It turns out, yeah, because it doesn't work out because Sensei's wife is kind, I guess.
Yeah,
Um, um,
she's a very and it's interesting because you can see that it's her nature. Like she's not kind because she has to. The way it comes out in the story is something that's very natural to her.
yeah, yeah.
She has almost a motherly side.
Yeah, and of course, like one of the things which comes up in the conversation that which they have at that point, because she calls him, so he's there sitting there in the study brooding, waiting for a burglar in the study, which is not a good place to wait anyway. And they move to
Hmm.
the living room or something.
Yes.
And so one of the things which comes up, given that you just mentioned about how she comes across as a kind person, and how she's beautiful as well. Why is it that this man Sensei, who has a kind and beautiful wife who loves him, and they
Hmm.
seem to be
Hates
getting,
humanity
yes, um, and
seems oxymoronic to him. Like that makes no sense.
yeah, and that is probably why I guess the protagonist maybe assumed that he must have some that Sensei must have some deep philosophical reason for
Yeah.
it or something. Um, uh, so anyhow, they get into a conversation about Sensei who is away, um, and long story short, basically, the wife is also kind of despairing about Sensei because it's not like Sensei doesn't love her or is mistreating her, but like why has he shot himself?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. She can feel the
and
disconnect.
what she wants to know from the protagonist is, um, even though though the protagonist obviously cannot know that, is whether it is because it is something she does, um,
Mhm.
because she wants, and apparently they get into a fight as well. Sensei and the wife later on get into a fight as well because she asks him something like, or maybe that's another reason, but for that fight, like, is it because of me that you are like this?
Well, yeah, you can feel that she blames herself to a degree. She ponders at least
Yeah,
am I the cause of this? And then the more you read the final chapter, the more you understand why she may feel that way.
and
As-
also why Sensei doesn't want to tell her.
yeah.
Though that isn't totally clear. I mean, I guess it's because he doesn't want her to feel bad and guilty about it in any
Hmm.
way. But he also has a more esoteric reason about like not
Yeah,
wanting to.
seems like Mhm.
No,
seems like he wants to keep that part of himself only for himself.
but also I think he said something like he doesn't want to sully her beauty with the ugliness of the world or something.
Yes, yes. Which is like saying if I reveal that part of myself, she would expose to something that could reflect on her as well in a sense, and that could ruin her.
Um,
Which again, if you, I think makes sense because she was one of the reasons why the situation later on ends up being what it is.
at the same time, he does say himself that um, he thinks that if he had said to his wife what happened, that she would have forgiven him, and yeah,
But at the same time, she would have to face that part of their life together was hidden, and that would be the cause of her being spoiled or made not made impure by the outside world. But
So
anyway, one of the things that we forgot to mention is that every month Sensei goes to see a grave in a cemetery. I forgot to mention that. And that again, the character tries to give an sort of esoteric meaning to it. And Sensei says that it's something that will be revealed again in due time, but not now.
yeah, and another thing about that is that he never takes his wife to
Hmm. To
this.
the grave.
If, though I believe he did take the protagonist once,
Ye-
or maybe did.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes. One time they go together, and I think a second time the characters tries to bring him there, but Sensei finds a way to go somewhere else. I remember right. It's
So
when they go to the tree nursery.
I see.
The character wants to bring him again to the cemetery, but instead Sensei pretty much leads him to a different path.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so I guess that's enough about the first part.
There
So
is also mention of the father. There is
yes,
mention of
yes.
the father, of the narrator's father, and of Sensei's mother-in-law. Well, why? It's important because they are both connected by a sickness. Both of them have, I
The
think it's like,
illness, they're
I'm
connected.
not sure. Yeah, yeah, which has to do with their. It was not the liver. It was the kidneys. It was a kidney disease.
Yeah, and yeah, yeah. So yeah. So the protagonist has to go. I guess Sensei tells the protagonist to be careful about it. But
Yes,
but
to
with
be careful about family and money, pretty
family
much.
man, yeah.
And to make sure, since the protagonist is the youngest child, to ensure that his relatives leave in their final will, some to him in, like, make him heir of something before they die, especially before the father dies.
So I believe at this time it is when the protagonist finally graduates or something. Uh,
Yes, he's
from
going throughout the book. There are snippets where they say that it's studying, that sometimes he has to shut himself and he cannot go and visit Sensei because he has to study. At one point, he has to prepare his final thesis and he becomes a recluse pretty much, just going out to see, to go and check books at the library. And he's like hyper focused and even very proud of what he was able to achieve.
another thing which I observed was that the novel is very vague about the subject of study of the
Hmm.
characters basically of Sensei, of everyone. I guess of Sensei, of the protagonist, of K. Like I guess with K we do know that K's parents wanted K to study medicine, but he studied something else. In the anime,
Yeah, his adoptive
yeah,
parents, the
uh,
family he was given to, because again, we need to remember this is set in a period where some families were giving their children to wealthy families to bring them up, pretty much to rear them and make sure that they became some.
yeah, yeah. I think in the anime they kind of basically just say that he was studying theology rather than medicine, essentially.
Which is
Um,
kind of weird. Yeah, exactly, because it's one of the pivotal points of Kei's character, the fact that he goes against first his adoptive father's will, and then, as a result, against his biological father's will to follow the correct path, the true path.
yeah, I think they also kind of explained that when it comes to his original family as well, he was already estranged from it because he was brought up by his stepmother. Um,
Hmm.
uh, um, yeah, so we don't really know what the protagonist was studying. We know that he graduated, and I think maybe the reason why it's been vague is that it because so basically what happens is that Sensei and his wife hold a little party to congratulate,
Yeah,
and you know when
even if Sensei, it's almost ironic about his congratulating them.
yeah.
Let's say it's pretty much saying to him, "Don't let it get to your head."
Yeah, you see, I mean, he just didn't seem to
It's
care
no,
about
of
it.
course, it's also it's kind of happy for him, but at the same time, it warns him about putting too much importance on this, whereas the main character's father puts a lot of
Yeah,
emphasis
yeah.
later.
Like the impression I got is that like Sensei was trying to like act like he wanted to congratulate him, but it's not really there in him to because he doesn't really think it's such a big deal. He doesn't really care.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's why it tries to say you did it, but remember, don't put too much weight on this achievement in your life. This is not the most important thing in your life.
Well, you have to, and I guess so. You contrasted it with what with the father's reaction
Hmm.
as well.
And even with the brother's
Yeah,
reaction, because one of the few traits that we get about the narrator's brother is that he puts a lot of emphasis in the worth of people. That if you don't achieve something in life, you're worthless. Seems to have this very utilitarian view of
yeah, yeah. But basically, both his father and his elder brother and his mother,
that.
basically, they put basically people's worth come from the work that they do. So somebody like Sensei who does nothing, um,
Yeah.
obviously cannot be of any worth. Um,
Hmm.
I would say the elder brother is also so seemed also to be more against Sensei's way of being because I think the difference was that Sensei's father thought that like anyone who would have a skill would use it, obviously. So that means that Sensei is worthless because he doesn't have a skill.
Yeah.
Whereas the protagonist's brother, elder brother, thinks that people who have skills but don't use them are worthless and
Yeah.
evil.
Even more.
Yeah. Um, so basically, he thinks that Sensei has a skill but doesn't use it, and that
Mhm.
makes him worthless. And I guess you could argue that like whose advice, whose point of view is correct, because like you could also say that maybe the family had a point because Sensei at the end of the day he just has money to just live a,
Mhm.
a comfortable life. So what does he know about the value of an education? Because even if he got one, he didn't really do anything with it because of other.
I
Um,
do believe the problem with both the father's and the brother's point of view is that there is truth in both. Especially, I do believe that the brother's point is really good. What we call someone that's lukewarm, someone who has the potential to do but doesn't do it. The
mm,
problem is how um, they seem to, for them, seems to be something that there is no redeeming factor. Once you go there, it's a little bit like in the character of what's the name of that character in Les Miserables? Um, Javier, the guard's captain. It says, "Once a thief, forever a thief. For him, there is no redemption." I think it's something similar. The problem is not that these people are falling short; is that once you fall short once, it's forever gone.
I think it's it to me like the difference is. and this is not. I would say this is more of a difference between the protagonist perspective and the family's perspective. I would say about Sensei. Sensei himself doesn't give a shit about himself. He thinks he's nothing. Um, so it's more the protagonist who sees worth in Sensei than Sensei himself.
Hmm.
So the difference is that the father says that even though I'm not as educated as you are, you, like at least they seem to put an emphasis on a real life as opposed to ideas. The protagonist puts
Hmm.
more of like more of an emphasis on ideas.
Yes.
And Sensei as well. He's kind of weird in between, I would say, because on the one hand, because he has certain ideas, he cannot live with believing that he's a bad person, whereas most people don't have a problem with that. So he's on the one hand ruled by ideas, but
Hmm.
on the other hand, he also has um I guess earthy, down to earth, kind of a view of telling the protagonist go and get your money. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's say Sensei seems to have a bit his priorities sorted out a bit better than either the narrator and the narrator's family.
yeah, but on the other hand, you could say that the protagonist's father dies satisfied, thinking that all of his children have made it. Um, and stuff. Whereas Sensei, even though he has better ideas, um, his life is a mess. So it doesn't.
Hmm.
So
Maybe this is more like speaking about how a simple life like the father lived. There are positive aspects to it, and that sometimes a life like that of Sensei loses its meaning at one point. But
mm,
I don't know if it's justifying it. That's the thing, because if
because because
the story doesn't seem to.
the protagonist himself compares Sensei to his father, and in the end, while his father is dying, he chooses Sensei essentially.
Yeah, it runs away. Maybe we should talk about the second chapter. The first chapter
Yeah.
ends with summer vacations once more. Sensei informs him that they're probably gonna go somewhere to enjoy some leisure time, his wife and him. And the narrator returns home to show the um, the certificate he got from university, his degree, and then with the news, knowing that his father it's getting worse, despite him saying he's not feeling bad. His mother tells him that his father is getting worse, and Sensei, having told him that there is no remedy, there is no cure, and that his father is pretty much on his last leg. The second chapter is my parents and I, and it's rather long description of the family life and the deteriorating of the narrator's father's health. I think it was a rather straightforward chapter compared to the first and the last one, don't you think? It was way more grounded in the daily lives of these people compared
Yeah,
to.
because because I would say because the parents and the family are more are more grounded, normal
Yes, yes,
people.
shows a more rural side of Japan, whereas when they are in Tokyo, shows the more intellectual, the more um, even pseudo intellectual side of life. There it's the concrete life of everyday people
Yeah, but
in the rural
it's
areas.
not, yeah, it's not all like like a pastoral fairy tale where like
No,
everybody's
no, no.
is
Far from it. Far from it. Shows the issues. If anything, the protagonist is very. The narrator is very critical of how people think and live
like,
in this area of Japan.
yeah, I think probably the harshest moment is when like their father is dying and the elder brother and the protagonist are talking about who will have to look after the mother, and like
Yeah,
trying to push it on.
yeah. You should keep it now. It's better if you keep
Yeah.
her with.
I yeah, I think
Like if it's an old credenza that they need to.
yeah. So basically, the elder brother is ambitious, um, and because of his ambitions, he has moved to another province, and he only came back because the father is dying.
Hmm.
Um,
And the brother-in-law. There is also the brother-in-law who married their sister.
who had a miscarriage, and so she couldn't come
Hmm.
back because she was
Yeah,
pregnant again.
and
Um,
the brother-in-law tries to be the mediator between the three of them.
yes, yes, and
Seems to be the one who tries to make them reason and even accept their responsibilities to a degree towards their own family.
yeah, and the protagonist, I think, so basically, like, um, the elder brother sort of looks down on like on the protagonist's way of
Yeah.
life. Like he says, like, if all you want to do is like read books, um, look, you can do that here in the
Hmm.
countryside. So why don't you stay here? You might you won't have to do any work. Um, you know,
Yeah.
um, so you will grow to like it, and obviously the protagonist is like because he wants to go to Tokyo to be an intellectual or
Exactly.
whatever,
He wants to return.
and like he sort of the protagonist sort of sees countryside life as degrading
Hmm.
as an intellectual, I guess. I
Yeah.
guess.
It's good. When I was reading this part, reminded me a little bit of how, on the opposite side, um, Osamu Dazai instead had a sense of fondness for the rural people and the rural life of Japan. I was contrasting when I was reading these parts the two views of these two authors. Of course, in this case, I don't think it's the real point of view of
The author.
Natsume Soseki when he's talking about these rural folks, but probably it's the attitude he picked up during his times as a university student, and maybe even when he was studying abroad.
Yeah,
So
I would also say that, I mean, he didn't like London, but maybe he still liked Tokyo. Uh,
yeah.
at the time, also at the time, like in the novel, like it's described that you know, like the Sensei himself says that like back when yeah, but that Sensei, not the protagonist, but so it
Yeah,
doesn't matter
back in
because
my days.
yeah, back in my days, like it wasn't that big of a city or that area anyway wasn't that developed. Like
Yeah.
there was mud on the street. You know the scene, right? Where like
Hmm.
he has to step aside for Ojo-san and then K uh, to pass through.
Yeah, yeah.
He has to step into the mud because the path is so small. Anyhow, that's later. But yeah, but at the same time, I guess we should also remember that Dazai was writing about the 1940s, and this is 1914.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe Tokyo was a little bit different. Who knows?
Hmm.
It was still, I guess, the biggest city, and it's a big deal for the characters. But I mean, I don't know, like, um, yeah, I haven't read the book that you're talking about, where Dazai himself goes back to the countryside and likes it a lot. But in No Longer Human, anyway, the protagonist didn't seem to be that fond of the countryside.
No,
Um,
doesn't say much and seems to be feeling more at home in the big city, even with all its issues.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Maybe both of them with their characters are trying to explore this younger generation of students with their ideals, which I think would make sense in that
yeah. I
regard,
mean,
that they have this sense of
hmm.
dislike for the old ways and for the rural life.
Yeah, yeah. At the same time, I guess they still like the kindness of the people in the countryside or something. At least Dazai, anyway. I don't know about
Hmm.
Soseki here. Um, so anyhow, so I don't think. Do you remember anything else worth mentioning about the second part, or shall we move to the last part?
Let me think. Well, like you said, there is the description of the mother again as a woman that's lacking will, and that it's hiding the reality. Both the father and the mother seems to. Uh, if the father denies the fact that he's going to die soon, and the mother sees everything under the light that, oh, this is an improvement, that this means it's not as bad. At one point the father falls into a coma and she thinks that is just sleeping, and that's good for his health because it means he's recuperating somehow.
Yeah, she's
uh,
shown to be like a very ignorant, I guess, in those kind.
not ignorant, but say it's a very simple woman.
You know, speaking of the ignorance of women, I think one point which Sensei makes to K is that um, women learn different things. So you
Hmm.
know, so just because they're not interested in your philosophy or whatever, that doesn't make them
Yep,
dumb or something. Um,
exactly. Which is a very good point.
or maybe he just wanted to sleep with her. Or something. Anyhow, um, okay. So what else I guess we talked about the mother. Um,
The father is in complete denial. For example, when the brother-in-law, when his son-in-law arrives, is like, "I'm glad that you came, and I'm glad that my daughter did not travel, and I cannot wait to see the child as soon as I get back."
and another thing, which I don't think gets resolved, or does it get resolved? The will. Yeah, I don't think. I think the protagonist
No,
thinks
no,
about it, but you know.
he runs away before sorting all those things. We don't even hear about the death of the father, honestly. Uh, then the end for the story when it comes
Oh, and
to the
another
narrator.
thing, which is I guess worth mentioning is that the mother, like that, there's this misunderstanding building up that Sensei is going to find a job
Yes,
for
yes.
the
The mother has this great hope in this man, and even the father to a degree. And they think, oh, since this person is sensei, then he's gonna help you and you'll be able to find you a good job in Tokyo.
uh,
And
yeah,
protagonist writes to sensei pretty much pretending, saying, "Oh yeah, I'll ask him about this," but
yeah,
he
but
doesn't act.
yeah, like
He does it, but he doesn't do it for that reason. He writes mostly to tell him about his father and the fact that for the moment he cannot come and meet him in Tokyo.
yeah, he does ask Sensei once, but then when his mother tells him to ask again, he doesn't.
He
Um,
refuses. Yeah.
and another important thing which happens, which leads him to go away, run back to Tokyo, leaving his dying father. So so he receives a telegraph, which is which is a rare thing, or at least that's what they say. Was a rare thing to happen back in. But by the way, like a telegram, like would you receive a telegram by post? Uh,
I do believe yes. I think there were like transcripts.
I
Oh, and we forgot another very important thing: the death of the emperor
oof,
that occurred,
how
and
could you
they.
forget?
Oh my gosh, that's a very important plot point. Honestly, we almost skipped it.
Um, yeah. So before the father goes into a coma, um, the emperor dies, and then that's also when General Nogi
Mm-hmm.
kills himself. So so the reason, so I guess we need to explain who General Nogi was. So General Nogi,
Mm-hmm.
he won a big victory in the Russo Japanese War, like
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
the first time Japan defeat, or rather,
Defeated a Western.
yeah,
Yeah.
an Asian country defeated a Western country in a big battle like
Mhm.
that. Um, but before that, during the Setsuna Rebellion, I think that's the one where like you get the. Isn't that the one where you get the last samurai? Whatever, it doesn't matter.
I
Anyway,
could be that one, yes.
yeah, because
But yeah, it's mentioned
it's one of the
he lost.
yeah, civil wars. And because you know uh, it's with the whole with Emperor Meiji that they started modernizing and stuff.
Hmm.
And there was a revolution of sorts, I guess, by
Yeah.
some samurai or whatever to put the emperor back in power to try to get something done. Anyhow, yeah, he lost his General Nogi lost his banner or something
Hmm. The Imperial banner, yes.
during yeah, one of these battles, and now 30 years later, 30 years had passed since then, and obviously he had done something great by winning the war with Russia, but still he still felt the need to I wouldn't say atone for his sins, but more like I guess restore his honor and the emperor's honor by committing
Yeah.
suicide.
Hmm.
Um,
It's a form like the retainer kills himself because he needs to be close to his master.
yeah, I think don't they you have a word for it at the end or something?
Yes.
Junshi,
There
uh,
were, yes, Junshi.
following, which means following one's a lord to the grave, and obviously
Hmm.
um, sensei kind of uses it sort of ironically because
Yeah,
he's not
towards the end.
he's not I guess he's not exactly a man from I guess he is it's from Emperor Meiji's and Nogi's General Nogi's era, but um, he's still a newer man, somewhere in between the past.
Hmm.
And by the way, for anyone watching this on the stream, so what I have on the stream, and yeah, I have this on the screen on the stream, but I forgot this. So on your right, on the right, on the top right of the screen, you have a picture of General Nogi. In the middle, you have um, Emperor Meiji, and on the left, you have Natsume Soseki, the writer. And I guess I guess one thing which I wanted to show by showing their pictures is also that so Emperor Meiji and General Nogi are both in um, kind of European styled military
Yeah,
attire, and Soseki, of course, is in a suit rather than uh, wearing Japanese clothes as well. Um, I
because
think
after all, what that was one of the results.
Yeah,
of the
and
Meiji era was this attempt to at least outwardly embrace what they felt the West did right, and which is what propelled Japan into becoming one of the major powers in the world today.
but in the novel itself, if I'm not mistaken, whenever clothes or stuff like that is mentioned, it's mostly Japanese clothes. So
Yes,
uh,
yes.
or maybe the university uniform.
Hmm.
It's kind of weird that you imagine you had to wear a uniform at university. Anyhow, maybe you had in the West as well, for all that I know. Probably you did. So the impression I get is that probably the Emperor and General Nogi, and I don't know about Soseki, but I imagine that probably like that. So basically, the impression that I get, my uninformed impression, is that back then, the formal attire became Western, but the more informal, I guess, like
Yeah.
how most people would look like, would be still more Japanese, I guess.
Hmm.
Um,
It's
yeah,
many novels that, for example, I read a few more novels set in, not in that time frame, but just after the Meiji Restoration, and most of them show how sometimes, uh, for certain occasions, in few occasions, they will try to look more Western, but for the most part, these persons will feel more at ease in their own native Japanese attires. That he always felt a bit weird for them to dress in a more Western slash European way.
yeah. It wasn't natural yet. It felt more like a lap,
Hmm.
like that they're all playing as Westerners or something.
Yeah, again, it's something that it's described very well by Shushaku Endo, which says it was something for when he says about how he was dressed in a suit for his he was baptized and then confirmed that it's like this one felt like I felt this was something that didn't really fit me, that was alien to me. And he's talking both about his received faith and this type of clothing was like something that didn't fit him as a Japanese. So makes sense that even in these other novels they talk about this attempt to wear something that they honestly cannot really wear properly. I don't know about today, but for sure at that time
Yeah, I mean,
it was more difficult.
I think today it's more like the opposite. Like you have certain occasions, which are mostly formal, but also celebrations, celebratory as well.
Yeah,
Where you would put on uh, all Japanese attire. At least that's the impression that I get from anime. uh,
no, it
because
seems like that. When it's something like the Cherry Festival, when there are like New Year's
yeah,
celebrations,
yeah,
I do believe those are the times when they take out
yeah.
the real traditional
Because
clothing.
yeah, because obviously in anime it's more like a fetish, like an excuse to show the heroines wearing a yukata, or
Yeah,
or a miko,
mhm.
whatever. That's the sort of thing there.
I think it's something that all nations to a degree feel. Like, I cannot deny that if I were given the opportunity to dress up as a, I don't know, as a Roman noble, I would enjoy putting on sandals and a toga, as weird as it may look, or even would dress up like a nobleman from the the old times when Italy was a set of small, pretty much states and city states. There is a
Yeah,
sense of pride. Maybe it's different for us because it's something less relevant, and Japan is still in a when it's a time frame where these things are not so far off compared to the West.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't think. Yeah, I have some thoughts about clothing, more clothing trends or whatever. But let's get back to the novel.
Yeah. So
um,
after the death of the emperor, there is the suicide of one of his best generals, General Nogi, and the father gets worse in a sense. Pretty much, he convinced himself that, well, to a degree, seems to accept his own fate. Like, the emperor is dead, I'm gonna die. Also because of this, he tries to connect himself with the death of the emperor, pretty much.
yeah. So, but he sorts of flips between believing he's going to live and die.
Yes,
Probably
yes.
also because he's delirious because of his illness.
Yeah, oh, of course, there is also that. His mind is not in the right place
And
anymore. But
another thing which results, I think, from this is that the party, which so basically when the protagonist came back and he graduated, so they want the the parents wanted to put on a party.
mhm,
The
yeah,
protagonist obviously didn't want it because he didn't like the country bumpkins and boorish,
yeah,
like the local drunkard or whatever who would show up, or the people who just show up to eat as much food as
just
possible.
take advantage. Yeah,
Yeah. And but because the emperor dies, the party doesn't happen. But another thing to mention is that when the protagonist mentions his opposition to um, having this party, um, like the parents are like, but then but then what will people think? Like,
yeah, true.
uh,
Immediately they think about how others will look at them.
and the protagonist is like. No, I just meant that if you were doing this for me, then you don't need to worry about that because uh,
Yeah,
and I think the father is angry at this because it's like he's implying that the only reason that they want to have this party is so as to show just for the sake of other people, and
yeah.
he's like, no, it's also for you or whatever. But
hmm
I didn't find it particularly, I didn't buy
Sincere,
it.
yeah.
I didn't buy it. Um,
Yeah, they were not convincing in the room.
I,
So.
I can't remember how, but the father and the son end up making up about it because the protagonist is also kind of bitter about it. But yeah, I can't remember.
Later on, yeah, I think, um, when was it? Yeah, at one point they start to talk about this. After, I think, after the father collapses for the second time and is bedridden.
Yeah, yeah. I think the father's last words were something like "thank you" or whatever before he goes into his last
Yeah,
coma.
hmm
Or at least we assume they are
we
because the
yeah,
protagonist
we
fucks
don't
them.
know exactly. That's the interesting part because the story pretty much, um, is cut off from that moment onward. The protagonist is so restless, he rushes out.
So
Book,
we probably
yeah,
have to explain why. So he gets a telegram from Sensei asking him to come to Tokyo.
mhm.
And they think, oh, the mother thinks it's for a job, but the protagonist doesn't think so. And then he gets another a telegraph which says,
A huge envelope this time,
no, no.
and he understands.
Before that,
Huh?
he gets
Oh, true.
a second telegraph telling him not to come. So
Mm-hmm.
um, because basically Sensei had decided to send the
Yeah,
letter, and obviously the telegraph would come before the letter.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Then, as soon as the letter arrives, he understands that something is wrong. He already had the suspicion after the second telegram, but he couldn't bring himself to go. After he receives the letter, it's the event that triggers his reaction. He runs away from his home. He just sends a message through
The
a
driver,
ricochet
rickshaw driver.
driver,
Yeah.
yeah, and gets on the first train that is bound to Tokyo. And then the story stops there from its point of view. And the last part of the story, the last pretty much half of the story, it's recounting of Sensei's life from Sensei, who sent this very very long letter that is like his final test, like in
Yeah, I
his
was.
to
Yeah,
explain everything.
yeah,
And so we
yeah,
don't know what happens to the narrator
exactly.
or
Yeah,
what.
yeah. We're kind of left hanging. It's
There are
it's
a lot of plot threads that are left in the air. What happened? What's gonna happen to the father? What's gonna happen to the mother after the death of the father? What about the brother? What about the brother-in-law? And what about the narrator? We don't know.
yeah, we don't know. It's yeah. I was kind of half expecting there to the first time I read it, that there to be something like an
Yeah,
epilogue or
exactly.
something.
Some sort of epilogue. But at the same time, I was kind of happy that it didn't go. I'm not saying it's a cliche, but it's sort of expected. And instead, no. The last part of the book is just you can almost imagine this person so anxious to get back and reading through all of this, and you can almost imagine him realizing it's too late, and the best he can do is to understand what Sensei wants to teach him. That's it.
Yeah, yeah. There's no indication of him realizing, or I eh, like it's very unlikely. I think he must know that it's very unlikely that if he gets back, he's able to stop Sensei.
Yeah.
And we don't really know. I mean, we know that Sensei is dead when the protagonist writes uh,
Mm-hmm.
the first part. But later on, because that's how it works. Um, because the last part is like a flashback, but it's a letter. Anyhow, I
Yeah.
was just confusing myself. Anyhow, because there's no epilogue, we are not told whether Sensei dies or not. But we know that Sensei is dead um, because the protagonist
Yeah.
says
Told
so
us earlier.
earlier. But we don't know whether he died because he kills himself. We just assume that that's the most likely thing because,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Um, I think that's basically what everybody assumes, except maybe children. Maybe like they tell middle schoolers, like uh,
Oh
like
no, he arrived in time. He saved it, and
yeah,
Sensei
like,
did all the left.
or it's more like we don't know whether
Yeah.
he arrived in time or not. Um,
Not.
it's like the ending of Ashita no Jo, the manga about the bots, and at the end they show him sitting still with his with
Oh yeah, yeah. You
eyes
told
closed and a
me.
smile on his face, and the mangaka in an interview he said that. Because kids are also reading this. So basically, like when you're younger and you read this, you think that oh he's just sitting there, smiling to himself, even
Nope.
even though he lost the championship. But when you're older, then you will think something different. um,
Yeah.
so okay, so the last part. Um, so I guess the last part starts with sort of an explanation, to kind of ease us in. So basically, Sensei says that he received when he received. So at first he wanted to tell the protagonist in person this stuff which he had promised, and
Mm-hmm.
he says that now he's ready to tell this stuff because he's going to die. So, and he also says, I think pretty early on that, or maybe at the end as well, that he doesn't want the protagonist to tell any of this stuff to the wife.
Yeah.
Um, and he also says that when he heard that. When he heard that about that he wanted a job, the fact that he wanted a job, his first feeling was that um, this guy is too greedy, like he wants a job as soon as he graduated. But um, yeah. What else did he say? Anything else more? Um,
um, don't remember. No, honestly, just
oh,
starts to.
he also explains that he doesn't just he's not telling this stuff to the protagonist out of like a sense of duty to keep his promise,
Yeah.
um, but because he just wants to write it, and also that someone might know about his real past before he dies.
He wants to confide in him, pretty much,
Yeah,
this last secret.
and yeah, so then he explains. So yeah, I think that's it. Then he goes on to explain what the fact that he was a student and that he was cheated out of his
Mm-hmm.
inheritance, uh,
Inheritance.
and that but by people whom he trusted, and that he was
Yeah,
very
his family, his
his
uncle.
and that he trusted his uncle because his father him
Always
that
spoke, yeah, always spoke great in with praising words of this
uh,
brother of his.
yeah, and that his uncle tried to marry him off to marry Sensei of with the uncle's daughter, um, s-
Mm,
s- and that he took some pleasure in the fact that, but there wasn't really any love between the two cousins. So between
no,
Sensei,
exactly. Said
but yeah, but it like
it
it,
felt more like they were companions, like almost like brothers.
yeah, exactly, because they knew each other from a young age. I guess cousin marriages was still a thing pretty recently in Japan. I mean, this is 1940s. Um,
Yeah,
and he doesn't seem to make a deal about that. It's just that he doesn't feel like it. Um,
yeah. It's not like
you're cutting out, Chiasmo. Hello, Chiasmo. You're cutting out.
therefore he said not to.
Sorry, you cut out. I didn't hear most of what you said.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Yeah.
No.
What did you say
Okay.
earlier? Hello, Chiasmo.
No, I was saying
You're still cutting out.
like just
Uh,
knows that the kind of feeling. Oh my
I'll leave the call and come back to the call. Maybe that will fix it.
internet, yes.
Uh, okay. Okay, I'm back.
I think it's my internet.
Okay, I think I can
It's
hear you now.
acting up. But let's try. Okay, now I was just saying that yes, he described it as something that he didn't do fight or to hurt her, but it was like he expressed his real feelings without even thinking, pretty much. And
Yeah, yeah,
that's why he felt that he didn't do it to prove a point or anything. It was just no,
yeah,
I didn't want to marry her, and
yeah,
that's
but
it.
he didn't realize that it was because to get his property as well. And I
Yep,
guess
yeah, yeah.
and
To control him.
he says that he gets some petty satisfaction that he didn't get let let the uncle
Later on, yeah,
yeah
exactly. Looking back at this proposal, is like, well, at least I was able not to fall completely for this.
yeah I mean
I
I
dodged that bullet.
yeah I mean I guess what would have happened probably is that he would have basically stolen even the little belt which was left. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
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 he would have been able to control his life too.
so this
Would have been
basically,
under his.
yeah, yeah, because he would have been the head of the house, or that he lived under.
Yeah.
And so basically this I guess answers one of the protagonist's questions, which is, how much money have you got, Sensei? Um, uh,
Very little.
yeah, well, enough to do nothing, to live basically as a neat.
Uh,
Yeah, Sensei is basically a
mhm.
neat. Um,
Yeah, but he
so
was cheated of most of his money.
yeah, yeah,
Been.
and so after getting cheated out of most of his wealth, he moves to um, uh, so he was cheated out of his wealth while he was at university
Hmm.
in Tokyo, and
He just wants to. He comes back. Pretty much the first time he comes back after his father's death, it's starting, and his uncle is taking care of the house, various things that are linked to the family. The second time is when his uncle proposes the marriage and he refuses. And the third time is when he starts to realize that something is going wrong, because the family start to be
cold
uh,
towards him.
colder and more distant. Yeah, and he realizes, and then it's when it's for, let's say, it's first waking up, when he starts to shed off some of his naivety, and he realizes that he starts to hear voices, how his uncle, through a friend, how his uncle was in some financial troubles, but now it's recuperating from it. Um, and then he discovers that pretty much he was cheated of everything, and only through the intervention of some other relative he's able to get something out of this, even if he distrusts everyone from that moment on.
Yeah, he doesn't even want to go to
He
court.
sells his property.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
he said,
exactly. Just like, whatever, I'm fed up with
yeah.
people.
I think it was because like he was at university, and he didn't have the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Exactly. It's like, I don't even. I haven't got the energy
yeah,
and the time to deal with you. So at this point, I'd rather disappear.
yeah,
He pays one last visit to his parents' grave, and he vows to never come to
yeah,
this part of the country ever again.
yeah. He basically sells his property, and yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
and
And he's fed up with the border, with the uh,
with a
he
soldier's
was
wife, I guess.
living
I guess.
uh, in a boarding house, and he's
Yeah.
no, yeah, but before that, um, yeah, it's not a boarding house. It's the other name. The
Mm,
student lodge,
mm,
and everyone starts says, because of who I was and the money I had, people started to look at me like I was someone, like a privileged person to a degree, and then he decides to go and look for a new place, becomes a lodger. Well, want to describe what happens in between?
Um. uh, Well, I guess. Yeah, I guess we can just move on to the place where like. So he finds uh, a house where a
Hmm.
widow, a war widow, I guess. A soldier,
Yeah,
and
a soldier.
yeah,
Yeah.
soldier's wife, um, and her beautiful daughter, whom we shall call Ojo-san. Ojo-san means something like young lady.
Hmm.
That's how they usually translate it in anime. It's not a name. It's, I guess,
No, it's a title more. It's like Ocha-san.
yeah.
It's more like, uh, again, I think it aunt. I think it's the name is the, if I remember right, should be like, would be like auntie.
And
It's more of a
yeah.
name.
But yeah, you're breaking up a little bit again, but um, so and the mother, she in the novel she's called Okusan, or however you say that, which I guess means something like mistress of the house or whatever. Um,
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, and so he's very the protagonist is very now the protagonist is Sensei. Um,
Yeah.
Sensei is very distrustful of and so this is a flashback, by the way. So this is back in his student days, and he's very distrustful of people. I mean, he's distrustful of people even when he's older. But anyhow, he's distrustful of people, and but basically, uh, Ojo-san's loveliness, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and
And even also son.
yeah, and even Okusan or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There are
Slowly winning him over.
yeah, and he basically he basically falls in love with Ojo-san, and yeah, he basically becomes starts. I think he says that it was like a contradiction, but he still believed in love even though he hated all of humanity. Uh,
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I think that basically explains that part of the novel. So shall we go straight to K? Um,
Yeah. After a while, he befriends, and not really befriends, but becomes close enough with a student that he shall name K.
by the
He
way,
doesn't say his
um,
full name.
I think that Kay and the protagonist knew each other from their childhood days.
Yes, yes.
Uh,
Since elementary school, it says that they studied together and that they slowly became at least acquaintance. Doesn't say exactly if they were like close
yeah,
friends, but
yeah.
at least
But another thing which they do say is that Kay was always academically better
mhm,
than the
was a
protagonist.
better student, more focused, and he came from a priestly family
A
of
Buddhist
a,
monk family or something. Yeah.
of a specific sect. I don't recall the name. That wasn't like, let's say, wealthy or but had influence. That's the thing. And he was able, because of this, he was able to pretty much be adopted by a rich family, by a doctor's family, and sent later on to Tokyo to study.
But by the way, in the footnotes, they describe that sect as a Protestant sect. I don't know what the heck a Protestant Buddhist sect would be, but yeah,
Not
uh,
sure.
um, yeah. So he's adopted by um, a doctor's family, and he's sent to Tokyo to learn medicine because obviously they want him to become a doctor, just like
Hmm.
because the head of the house is a doctor, and
Yeah, exactly.
but instead he wants to study something else. But we're not really told.
No, exactly. Doesn't specify. He just said that he wants to follow his own path, and how does it describe it? The true way.
Yeah.
Something.
But the protagonist
It's so
implies
yeah.
the protagonist
It's very
implies
muddled and unclear.
yeah the protagonist implies that they both didn't know what the true way was, and that um,
Exactly.
like and also the protagonist, by which I mean Sensei again, and Sensei also says that he supported he basically supported K's decision to
Hmm.
lie, basically lie to his adopted parents and parents.
Knowing that we will have to share. of course, in the future,
Yeah, yeah.
the consequences of this decision.
And that even though he didn't feel like he was ready at that moment, he knew that he would have to.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, and he does say that he does, I guess, take responsibility, but um, it,
Yeah, yeah.
but
Later on,
it doesn't seem like he's really interested with following K's ways as well, because he does lie to K, that, oh, like, I want you to come to the place I live so that I can follow your ways, K. It's not because of anything else. Yeah. So anyway, so he befriends K, and we're never told what. Yeah, the book is very vague with names. Like, oh,
yeah, doesn't say pretty much. Very few characters are named.
yeah, because when we're talking about K, it's not like Kay a name. It's just the letter K.
Just the letter
Okay.
K.
And so K gets caught out. But he basically confesses to. Um,
Yeah, exactly. One summer, where I think it's pretty much is implied that that's the second summer, the summer when Sensei is asked by his husband to marry his daughter. At the same time, Kei sends finally a letter to his adoptive father, revealing that he's not studying to become a doctor, actually is following his own path, and pretty much is asking, even if I didn't follow what you wanted, would you support me anyway?
and
And
he
he
gets
seems to
disowned.
be hoping, pretty much like hoping that it's going to happen. And what happens is, first is pretty much uh, reproached by both his adoptive father and biological father. Then he's kicked out of the adoptive family, and after that he's kicked out of his native family too. So he loses any financial support and any family support of any kind. The only person that seems to care is his sister and his brother-in-law.
But they don't
They
have any
plead,
money.
yeah, and they plead to Sensei, who's narrating the story, to take care of Kei for them, pretty much.
Yes, and K basically starts. I think he starts doing some teaching job or whatever. But
Yeah, night teaching. He
uh,
has to do it to support himself.
and to basically fund his studies as well.
Hmm.
And basically, K doesn't complain or anything like that.
He believes on the opposite. Later on, he reveals to Sensei that he believes that the more hardship you go through, the stronger you get. Pretty much.
What doesn't kill you makes you
Yeah,
stronger. Pretty
yeah.
sure. I wouldn't be
But
surprised.
Sensei doesn't seem to agree.
Yeah, he thinks that you should eat a little bit of everything or whatever.
Yeah, as I saying, it's important to challenge yourself. At the time, you should take a break. You know what?
And he, I guess, he stoically or whatever, or maybe um, following his path or whatever, and he doesn't want Sensei's help.
Compromise.
Yeah, doesn't want to compromise. That's a good way to put it. Um,
And doesn't want even the financial sense.
yeah, yeah. Though he didn't have any problem with deceiving his parents,
Yeah.
his adoptive parents, to get their financial support. But anyhow, Sensei is able to deceive K. Um, so he tells K that if I want you to come to our place, the place where I live, um, because I want to learn from you. I want to learn.
Hmm.
But the real reason is because he wants the kindness of Ojo-san and Oku-san, the two women.
Yeah, to
to
warm him up a little.
yeah, and so he has to convince Okusan, the mother, um,
Hmm.
Ojo-san's mother, and um, I guess he's able to get her to agree to it when like he explains that like his unfortunate circumstances, but K's mother, no, not K's mother. I mean Ojo-san's mother at the end says, "Well, be careful that you're not going to regret this." Uh, um, and I think
Last famous words.
yeah, I think she was basically talking about Ojo-san, because I think she
Yeah,
probably knew that
she understood exactly that. Yeah, and she understood that Sensei already had some feelings, and she knew that putting another boy, another person in the house, putting another man in the house, wouldn't do any good in that regard.
and speaking of Ojo-san, like so the protagonist, I mean Sensei says that he thought that she was already a woman, and that she wanted to show him that she was already a woman and whatnot. So basically, what he implies is that she was very flirty, and
Hmm.
like you don't need to explain the whole thing. Just go and read the novel for you to see them flirting or
No, because
whatever.
yeah, exactly. It's explained in a very realistic way. And
Yeah, it's not
that,
like that they're sleeping together like or something
yeah,
stupid and melodramatic like that.
hmm,
I,
it's subtle enough that you get the hints without having to say much.
but I think I don't know if I don't think Sensei holds this against Ojo-san, but like
Oh no, it says that's like her nature to be a
y-
bit like this.
yeah, and
Yeah,
I like I mean because in a way her behavior is a little bit ambiguous. Um,
yeah.
it becomes a little bit ambiguous, or at least it seems to us, because it seems like she's meeting up with Kay and laughing later on. Yes,
But let's be honest, that could be also her tactic to get his attention more, which is not unusual.
yeah, we have no idea like what she was thinking, whether she liked Kay, which I doubt, because he seemed, I don't know, like he didn't, I don't know, but it could be. That's what the anime makes it out to be, but I doubt it. Um,
Hmm.
um, it
Yeah, it doesn't. In the story, seems more like she sort of take advantage. Maybe not even. Uh,
consciously.
yeah, exactly. Maybe something more like she does it without realizing it. She takes advantage of the situation and makes them go one against the other to see which one will have the courage to ask for a hand in marriage.
Yeah, or maybe she didn't even consider Kay to be like a romantic partner or whatever. So
Yeah, exactly. She saw me more like someone she had a good time with, like that's it, a friend.
yeah, um,
She friend zoned him.
exactly. Um, yeah, that could be it. But we don't really know what she's thinking.
Yeah.
And I mean, when we see her, or like when she's 40 years old or whatever, like it's never implied that like she was in love with Kay or whatever, or anything like
Hmm.
that. Um, so yeah, so Kay comes in. He's very cold at first, but then um,
Slowly, they are able to,
yeah, yeah,
the three of them,
yeah,
and especially the two women of the household, are able to slowly warm him up a little bit, in a sense.
yeah,
And
and
it's a bit much, probably. That's probably.
too much, yeah, yeah, warming up in the wrong places. So Yeah. So I guess so. Yeah, the protagonist becomes the sensei becomes jealous and suspicious, uh,
Yeah,
and he
they go at one point for a trip.
yeah, that's a good. That you go.
That part, they go for a few days and travel in different places, and it's especially that one is a reflection upon Kay's moral and religious views. I think it's like the two of them sharing. There is tension between the two of them. He says that they feel that he felt it was more like two paddlers going on the same road rather than two friends
Yeah,
on
but I think that that was also because of the heat, and I also kind of felt like Kay didn't really
the
hate.
discomfort.
Yeah, Kay didn't really hate the protagonist or know that the
No, it's
protagonist
more like sensei. This is more like sensei feeling this sort of animosity
towards
coming
Kay.
and going.
Yeah,
Yeah, it shows that he still cares for him.
yeah, yeah. So,
He still
li-
sees him as
like
a
yeah,
friend, but there is also
like sometimes he would say like, "Oh, there's no way that Kay would be like that because he's following his true way or whatever."
mhm.
But then the next
At
moment
the
he would
same
be
time,
jealous.
yeah, he sees him as a rival.
And we don't really know whether Kay was in love with Ojo-san or not. At this point, I don't think.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think we really know. And another thing which I didn't like in the anime adaptation is that like um like because in the anime adaptation Kay knows and it's obvious that Kay knows that um the protagonist is already in love with Ojo-san.
Hmm.
But
I see.
but we, but obviously that's not the case in the in the novel because otherwise he wouldn't have confessed
Yeah.
to his feelings to his feelings towards Ojo-san uh,
Yeah.
to Sensei. I mean, I guess he was if he was thinking very tactically, he might have, but it didn't seem like it.
No,
Um,
it seemed like he thought that Sensei wasn't really interested.
yeah, um, yeah. I think that this part is a lot more interesting probably to read than yeah.
Yeah, this is because it shows really well how how these characters think and how Sensei saw those events, how he perceived the situation and the emotions welling up in him.
Yeah,
There is a sort of back and forth with what he says outwardly and what he's feeling inwardly, which is it's very interesting. It's very well written too.
yeah, and also because like you kind of get the feeling that like nobody else has any idea about what's going on except Sensei basically. Um,
Yeah, everyone else is like guessing in the dark. Seems to be.
or, or maybe they're not even guessing because like maybe the mother doesn't really know
Or
that
yeah, they don't even, or they don't even care.
and because by the
They
end
just don't even pose
yeah
the questions.
yeah but by the end obviously only the protagonist knows why Kay kills himself.
Yeah.
um yeah, so I guess we could just jump to and say that well Kay uh, and so I think the most interesting thing which happens before the suicide I guess is that
Mhm.
uh, the confession which the stuttering and it's described very beautifully like it's not exactly stuttering. It's like his lips move, Kay's lips move
Yeah,
before
he's
he
about to
says,
say something.
"Yeah." Um, and later on, the next day or something, um, Sensei is able to like create a situation where Kay um, Kay is he's basically able to bait Kay into talking about the topic again. and
Yeah.
and then he uses case words. Um,
Yeah.
so basically, when they had gone on that torturous trip in the
Hmm.
in
During the sun,
sun, uh,
where they were baked by the sun and
and
didn't
been
enjoy their time. It's
yeah, I mean they're basically spending their time being passive aggressive to each other, and it
mhm.
ended up losing weight, uh, and getting I guess
Yeah, sun baked pretty
yeah.
much.
So I think it was during the trip that Case says that
Yes.
what
What
does it
does it
say?
say? Like a man who has no spiritual, something like, well, pretty much says that someone wasn't got us. Um,
Who doesn't pursue spiritual
yeah,
enlightenment is
something
worth nothing.
different is a exact is an idiot.
He's an idiot. Yeah,
It's very blunt. It's very blunt. Like yeah, and at that point, after the confession, after he's able to baiting Kay once again, bringing up the topic and seeing that he cannot find that Kay cannot find a resolution to go through with this, he uses the same words against him, pretty much
yeah,
saying, "You speak so much about the highway, going against the grain, but you're just a coward." Pretty much doesn't say in this word, but makes him feel that way.
yeah, and he basically says, and Kay doesn't really push back on it either. He says something.
No, it seems to almost agree, like saying, "Yeah, I'm a coward."
Yeah. Um, and then I can't remember exactly what happens to make the protagonist, I guess, Sensei basically plunge the knife in or whatever by
Yeah, spill the bean.
by basically he decides to um so I think this is also when that incident where like um he goes out and he's upset and he sees
Hmm.
Ojosa and it's raining or something or at least it
Yeah,
was
there are,
raining.
it says that it's a narrow path behind the arsenal in a sort of old area of the city,
And like that
and there is a very narrow passage where one is able to walk without getting like sinking into the mud. And first, in meets K, they don't talk much; they just exchange a couple of words. Then he moves aside to let him go, and then he sees someone else behind him, and then he realizes that it's Ojo-san, and then he moves into the mud to let her go through,
yeah.
and this raises even more questions. And
Uh,
she says, "Oh no, we just randomly met."
Yeah, but he doesn't believe that. And I don't exactly blame him either. But
No, and that.
Ojo-san, and yeah, and
Hmm.
surprisingly, it was well. He says that it was surprisingly easy, and it seemed pretty easy. Um, yeah, I mean that's always easy to say about someone else's confession, but it's still a bit weird because the confession, of course, is not to Ojo-san herself.
Hmm.
It's not like Ojo-san has anything against the marriage either,
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
as Oko-san explains, and and then after so to do this he pretends to be sick and stays at home, and both Kei and Ojo-san leave to do something, and only the mother and him are
Then
left.
yeah,
So
and he
after
has the opportunity.
yeah, he has the opportunity, and after he has done this, um, the problem he has is how is he going to tell Kay? Uh,
Hmm. He
uh,
cannot bring himself. He's like, but if I don't do this, I know I'll be able to really be friend with him anymore. Starts to wonder how to break the news without being too blunt or without surprising him too much.
yeah, I mean, honestly, at that point, he should have. He should have just given up on being like the good person, um,
Yeah,
and
and he realizes after pretty much at one point, I think it's like after a week or something like this, um, or Ojo-san's mother asks him if he told Kei about this, and he's like, "Well, I'm trying to. I haven't done it yet." And it's the only time, pretty much, where this woman seems to be displeased with him.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not exactly clear, totally clear why. I mean, I guess, yeah. You should.
Well, because she's like, "You made him come here. You wanted us to try and be kind to him, and then you do him wrong like this. After you ask for
Yeah,
my wife's hand to."
but I'm not sure whether she knows. She knows that Kay was in love with Ojo-san.
No, I don't think so.
So I think
That's
she was just admonishing him for not,
yeah,
like,
like
oh, oh
he's your friend,
yeah.
exactly. You don't say to him something this important.
Yeah, but obviously because of what Sensei has done, it has a double meaning, even though she's not aware of it.
Mm.
Right. Um, and basically he resolves to come to a decision about what to do next morning or whatever. Um, uh,
Yeah, and he says that he also mentions how he asks pretty much Hoki-san to tell how the how Kid's reaction was to discovering this, and she's like didn't seem to mind much. Again, she seems to be a little bit unaware of
yeah, I think
the situation.
yeah, I think Kay said something like. Oh, when is the wedding?
Yeah, I
I
don't
don't.
think I can buy a present
Yeah,
for.
I would like to buy a present, but I'm poor, so I
Mhm.
don't have any money, so I can't. Yeah, and I and because of that, even though those might have been just words out of politeness,
Mhm.
that sort of hurts Sensei or whatever, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, so anyhow, the next morning, he decides
He
that.
resolves. Yeah, he resolves to finally try and clarify things with his childhood friend, and of course,
Yeah,
what a last spoiler.
yeah, it's too late. Kay kills himself during the night, and yeah, so Kay kills himself, and it's well described and all that. But I guess what, yeah, so I guess, and then they got married.
Mhm.
Uh,
Another interesting thing is um, he looks for, as soon as he realizes what happened, he looks for a letter, like a last confession from Kay, and he finds it, and it's addressed to him. And when he realizes that in the letter it says nothing about Ojo-san and the whole situation, he realizes that the only thing he could think at the moment is "I'm saved."
yeah,
He
yeah,
did mention it, and this one reminds me a little bit of something similar that happens in the movie Stalker. There is a subplot about the main protagonist, let's say mentor figure, the porcupine is called, who lost his brother in the zone, found the room where your desires come true, the true desires of your heart come true, and he became incredibly rich. So he realized that his real desire wasn't to bring his brother back to life, but just to become rich, and that's what led him to commit suicide. In a sense, the same kind of guilt over saving his own face rather than understanding his friend and wanting to see what he really wanted to say at the end of his life is what haunted Sensei for the rest of his life, and that's why he couldn't bear to say it,
Mm.
and have it revealed to his wife.
Yeah, I mean, I,
I think
I
it's a
think
similar kind of guilt that
yeah, I don't
top.
think I don't think like that he was necessarily feeling guilty either. I mean, it was more like um, he was disgusted with himself because
Yeah,
he wasn't as pure as he thought. He wasn't
exactly. But
any.
that's why I think it's similar to that subplot in Stalker, because it's more realizing that despite his posturing, etc., he was just like his uncle, which is something I mentioned too.
Yeah, yeah, and
Similar to that realization
yeah,
for the porcupine. So,
he was basically an ordinary man like his uncle, and
yeah.
he was basically disgusted at himself, just as he was disgusted at the rest of humanity, except maybe his
Mhm.
wife. I don't know. That's never made clear, like with his whether his wife is an exception or or something.
Yeah, it
Um,
seems like it's not even clear to himself to a degree. Maybe he wants to keep himself ignorant to a
yeah,
degree as well.
yeah. Maybe yeah. It's probably at some level he doesn't trust or something. I imagine. It's unclear.
Hmm.
Or maybe it doesn't matter because she's a woman. I don't know. Uh,
That's a form of, yeah, the way for him to cope is she would never understand, so
yeah, yeah.
I don't need to
Um,
worry about that.
well, yeah. I mean, it's weird. On the other hand, he says that she would understand, but then if she understood, then she would be corrupted. Uh,
Yeah, maybe because she would be inclined to forgive him, and that's what he sees also as a form of corruption.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so that's basically the story. It just yeah.
Hmm.
It
And the
just ends
last
now.
part, it's him pretty much considering, yes, how in a sense his suicide will be, it would be seen as being connected with the end of an era in itself, a little bit like what happened with General Nogi, even if he sees a sort of bitter irony because he knows he's a lesser man compared to that person.
Or maybe like no, I don't think he says that he thinks that he's a lesser man, but rather that
No, no,
he doesn't fully understand. He doesn't feel. Um, he doesn't
the
fully.
same connection.
Yeah. Like for example, we can understand General Nogi's
Hmm.
motives for killing himself, but
Yeah.
we don't really feel them, right? Like
Hmm.
um, we don't really think that that's the sensible thing to do.
Yeah.
Um, or something like that. It's a bit hard to explain. Um,
Seems a bit too extreme in a sense.
or maybe almost foreign.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I
Something that
like I understand why he would do that, but yeah, I wouldn't.
we can understand, but we would not condone it in a sense.
Exactly. Yeah, like or maybe we would not condone it, but when it comes to sensei, he wouldn't condone it, but he wouldn't be against it either. It's
Hmm.
yeah, just something different.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So yeah, he calls himself. So I mean, when it comes to the Meiji era, like I kind of feel like, in a sense, some of the people from that era were kind of more westernized than the
Hmm.
people who came later, like during the.
Yeah, there was an attempt to embrace a Western view, but then later on there was sort of,
A reaction against it.
yeah.
Um,
For example, writers like Yukio Mishima seem to be a reaction against this idea, and that's why he also committed suicide
um,
because he realized it's a lost cause.
so fortunately, here we have this author did not kill himself.
No, he died of, it was like cancer,
Yeah.
or it was either cancer or a very strong ulcer. I don't
Hmm.
remember which of the two had to do with his stomach. But yeah, I didn't commit suicide. He died relatively young. Was it like 49? No, or it was 59. I don't remember. Well, not so old in any case. And Kokoro was his last finished novel, right? If I remember, because he died in 1916, and Kokoro was finished in 1914.
Hmm. So okay. Yeah, he died. There's some stuff published in 1916. Yeah. But
It
yeah,
was like an unfinished
unfinished. Yeah.
manuscript, I think. He never finished him himself. I think there's someone else who
Yeah.
piggybacked
Have you seen
on it.
some of those Japanese manuscripts? By the way, they look a bit odd because uh, like like it's on squared paper, and the squares are
Hmm.
pretty large as well. And yeah, sometimes I've seen it's written in pencil as well. Pretty
Yeah, they scribbled down a lot of ideas, then connected them. To be honest, I saw some manuscripts of Italian writers, and they are not too different. They are very large, very big. There are notes jotted in, maybe an idea um, for a long set of paragraphs in the center, and then they got a lot of space all around to play with the words, remove, replace, add, and so on and so forth. So I think because maybe they get your first draft down, and then you can leave it, let's say, to settle for a little bit, and then you come back and with fresh eyes you go back at it. So you maybe erase, and I think it's the same even in the case of Japanese authors. Maybe they will come back and replace different kanjis or other sentence in there. So that's why maybe they have such wide and huge
yeah.
notebooks that you
So
could easily
okay,
add and remove.
so I guess ratings. What rating would you give this novel
I will
out of
give
10?
it 8.
Hmm.
It's an attempt to. It's. I think it's quite interesting because it tries to connect persons and people through both their good and their bad aspects. Sensei and his connection with his family and his friends and his future wife, and this young naive student trying to befriend this person that sees himself as just as bad as the rest, and that's why he's trying to shield from himself, so from becoming a bad influence. This younger person was potential. I think it's a good book. Sometimes maybe some aspects escape us a little bit because of the culture and the time frame once again. But I
Hmm.
think the central message of the story is understandable enough that sometimes we become what we hate about the people around ourselves, and that no matter the generations, that's something that we can find in all people, and that there is hope for the future, but we need to make sure that we teach that same lesson over and over again, because of
Yeah.
course it's something we keep.
It doesn't really end on a hopeful note. Um,
No, exactly.
but
Doesn't seem like a awful
yeah,
note at all.
yeah. I mean, it's not super tragic. I mean, it's like um, it's like over. It's the end. You know that's kind of what it feels like. Um, yeah. I mean, I guess the question which most people have about this is the motives for the suicides. Of course, that's the most fun thing. Um, so I guess with Sensei, I would say that he basically couldn't live with accepting that he was not a good person, or that most people are
Yeah,
not good people, or at least not.
in a sense, he can mask this. Yeah, the fact that he. No, finish your thoughts. Sorry.
Yeah, like what was my thought? That yeah, he basically like he couldn't accept that people are fickle and that he's fickle as well,
Hmm.
and that like that's life or whatever. Like you don't need
Um,
to. But
Pretty much anything that he can teach would be hypocritical because he's as bad as the people he preaches against.
yeah, so the solution is the solution is the one that he took. Essentially, that's the only solution.
And he
Uh,
just needed a good excuse. And the good excuse was the death of the emperor and the suicide of General Nogi.
yeah, so something was changing in the air, I guess, though, at that time too. Um, so so that's that. The, though and then when it comes to case suicide, uh, like the Sensei of course thinks that so at first he says that he thought that well, like obviously Kei just killed himself because
He failed at
love.
love.
Yeah, yeah. He was unable to get the woman that he wanted. Blah blah blah.
Mhm.
Secondly, he thought that later on he thought that once he had grown a bit, he thought that
Yeah, it says honestly that was a very dim-witted take.
yeah, and then he thinks that well, maybe it was because he realized that his ideals, his true way,
Yeah.
they contradicted reality, could not, they were not real, or maybe he couldn't just live up to them or something.
Mhm.
But then that didn't feel right to him either, and
Exactly.
in the end, he sort of concluded that it must have been because he must have felt true loneliness,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Sensei felt after you know because like like his true way failed, like was not a way out, and
Hmm.
well the people around him didn't understand his way. He couldn't even live up to his way, and
Hmm.
um, his friend, quote unquote friend, betrayed him.
Yeah, exactly. He
Uh,
felt like he failed himself, and then the people around him failed him as well.
and I think that's basically what Sensei felt as well.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
and he couldn't take it anymore.
I
And
mean, some people I've heard say that they think that it's implied that the protagonist is also now going to follow Sensei's way.
no,
No, it doesn't say.
honestly, it doesn't feel like this. Seems like he's still young enough that he can avoid that same phase.
But he does say that. I think he does say in the first part, basically the only
Hmm.
part in which we see it's often implied that like he's writing this much time later, now that he has experienced more hardships
Exactly.
in life
Yeah.
or whatever, but he still respects Sensei and does not reject him somehow.
Yeah,
Um,
but doesn't mean he's gonna follow in his in
yeah,
his
exactly.
footsteps.
Yeah. Um,
You can respect someone even if you don't want to live exactly like him.
Yeah, so there's a blog spot, but not a blog spot, a blog post. Blog spot is the blogging platform by Google. There's a blog post by Frogkun which I posted in the recording channel. We are not going to read it, but I'm just going to talk about it briefly because Frogkun did a translation of it's the first one. It's called Natsume Soseki and the Cult of Loneliness, or My Kokoro is wrong as I expected. So the reason why the thing about My Kokoro is wrong as I expected is because she came across she did a fan translation rather
Hmm.
for a light novel called Oregairu, um, and there's like a I guess a high schooler's report on Kokoro in
Oh,
that and the protagonist in that one It's a comedy, and it's called My Youth Romantic Comedy. Is wrong as I expected. Um,
Uh,
so basically, the protagonist is like is a loner, but really, if you think about it, um, he's basically an anime sort of harem protagonist. Not really a harem, but you basically have a bunch of girls orbiting him. But throughout he's acting like he's the loneliest person ever. He's basically like sensei or something.
okay.
But it's a romantic comedy. But there's some nice stuff in there, like cynical, vice cracking, but also funny, because we are laughing at the protagonist a little bit. Um, um, Observations, which I think at some point maybe we might talk about it. I think Bio Gundam wanted to talk about it as well, so if you do talk about it,
Okay.
he would show up as well at some point. With that said, yeah, it would have to
I
be.
think it's a book. Yeah, it's a book that's worth reading at least once.
Yeah,
It's quite interesting. The characters are very well realized, and they got depth. Absolutely.
yeah.
I can
Go.
understand why it's praised as one of the famous novels from that era of Japan.
So the one that we read was the Edwin McLennan translation. There's a new translation by Penguin, but I prefer the one by Edwin McLennan. So read that. There's a link in the description for you to go and read that. Or if not, there's a certain pirate site. You can get Natsume Soseki stuff from there.
There is
Uh,
a decent audiobook.
as well there. But I mean, the audiobook does have a little bit of
Yeah,
mistakes, but
not
which
enough that they ruin the experience, but yeah,
yeah.
it was kind of weird.
So yeah, but because the reason why I realized is because I was listening to the audiobook while reading the book as well. But um, and sometimes it does change the meaning a little bit. So
Yeah.
so it's a 9 out of 10 for me. Thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, leave a comment.